Look at that. We are live for RailNatter. Hello, everyone. Hello. I hope you're all well. We're here to talk about trains. We're here to talk about railways. We're here to talk about news. And we're here to catch up with quite a few things that have been happening. Oh, golly. As I'm sat here in a room that is 27 degrees with the window fully open, I'm forced to draw everyone's attention to Birmingham New Street Station, a station that I very specifically draw people's attention to in the book, as people will know, How the Rails Will Fix the Future. I write a little paragraph about this station. I'm not going to read it here. I draw attention to the fact that it was built using the same technology as created the jungle-like Eden project. And like the Eden project, it's entirely hermetically sealed, making sure that on a warm day like today, we're not even close to the peaks that we're going to see later in the summer. On a warm day like today, the station becomes absolutely intolerable to spend any time within at all. And that lack of forward thinking and the response of the railway trying to make it work and work its way through that is represented here by 3 large fans on the floor plugged into the wall attempting to move air around. And that's going to be the theme of tonight, I suspect. It's us running around trying to keep air moving so that we can all breathe. Actually, tell you what, let me just do this. And do this, and do this. Before we press ahead, I just want to draw everyone's attention to a thing that I need to say, which is I'm going to do a little bit of an intro ad to this. I just want to say this episode is only possible, RailNatter is only possible and ad-free because of our wonderful Patreon supporters. So just a heads up for those. More on Patreon later on, and there are changes afoot for those of you who are Patreon supporters, hopefully positive ones. More on that later. Anyway, without further ado, everyone, welcome to tonight's RailNatter. And as the Intercity 225 fades away, yes, Labour are indeed completely out of ideas. And we're going to crack on. Without further ado, the news. 1 year in and Labour are out of ideas. Yeah, so this is they're starting by referring to Keir Starmer's tweet, which I don't know if anyone remembers back to some of the messages we were seeing prior to the general election, but we were in a situation where we were seeing quite a lot of this sort of thing before, weren't we? Does anyone remember? Does anyone remember that? No? Anyone remember? We were seeing all this pro-driver stuff. My Wacom is on the wrong screen. That's annoying. I wonder why it's reset. That's strange. I'll have to fix that one later. Anyway, so here's Keir Starmer saying, no one wants to spend their Easter weekend stuck in traffic, so we're lifting more than 1,000 miles of roadworks over Easter. And to save you money, we've frozen fuel duty and delivered record funding to fix potholes. Drivers, I'm on your side. Okay, Keir. Probably not my best impersonation, I'll be quite honest with you. Anyway, yeah, there he is. The trouble is, with any impersonation I do, I'm not impersonating the human anymore. I'm impersonating... I'm impersonating Milo Edwards' impersonation of the human. So yeah, here we are. Drivers, I'm on your side. I encourage you to go further. Here he is. Look, this nonsense. This is just, I don't know who he's talking to, of course. But he's referring to this culture war thing, this drivers, I'm on your side rubbish. Anyway, so how's this manifesting itself? Well, unfortunately, you've got the Transport Secretary, sadly not the Shadow Secretary of State, the Secretary of State for Transport, Heidi Alexander here, saying, this is a horrifying sentence. Learning to drive is a rite of passage. No, it is a qualification that you have to earn by being skilled enough and safe enough a driver that you receive your license. It is not a rite of passage. Strange. All this stuff is more culture war stuff. It's extremely, yeah. So anyway, there we are. Then there's other stuff like this. Again, the Prime Minister saying that, talking about people who play music out loud on trains. Look, I'm annoyed by people who play music on trains as much as the next guy. But firstly, it is not a big societal like problem. Secondly and thirdly and fourthly, it's really difficult. Buying a set of headphones or earphones is, firstly, you have to have them around your person. They cost 80 or 90 quid if you've gotten earpods, if you've got an iPhone or whatever. It's expensive. People cannot necessarily afford to buy the kit to listen to music anymore because phones don't have an earphones jack, because the tech industry is allowed to do stuff like that. This is not something the Prime Minister should be talking about. And again, this is the potholes or the cones hotline. Out of ideas. The thing is, being out of ideas means that dangerous and annoying things happen. And you'd argue that there are other things the government's doing that are nothing to do with being out of ideas, just that it is a deeply sinister force. For example, Labour giving a peerage to Mark Harper and a knighthood to Grant Shapps. I mean, Grant Shapps was bad. Mark Harper was awful. So this is, do we... Yeah, the RMT here rightly pointing this out. Yeah, crikey. So, what else? Oh, yeah, that's right. Airports. It's not just the Heathrow Airport funding that Heathrow Airport being pushed, no funding for it, But, Heathrow is one thing where it's like, well, private money, except that it obviously isn't private money. It's a huge amount of public subsidy that allows that sort of thing to be created. What is even more sinister is the government opening a failed airport with 30 million quid of investment, an airport that already cost Doncaster Council and Sheffield Council a lot of money. This airport should have been left to rot. No, in fact, it shouldn't have been. It should have been converted into a mixed-use community with a rail connection built in. But instead, no. Big press release appearing in a hangar in Doncaster saying, yes, it's great, we're going to reopen this airport. What a waste of our money. We talk about taxpayers' money. Plenty of money for this rubbish. 30 million quid on reopening an airport that will immediately fail and will have to be propped up for years. A reminder that regional airports are bad for the economy. They're not good for anyone. No one benefits from them. They're bad for the environment. They're bad for the economy. They don't do anything good. We've covered this in a previous episode. And it doesn't stop there because the government has approved the Lower Thames crossing. Again, the Tories held it up because they were not confident that it would get through judicial review because it was a problem from an environmental perspective. Now, Labour waving it through. A reminder that Labour are doing some of the worst things. This is not an argument to say the Tories would be better. But the fewer bad things were happening under the Tories at this point than are currently happening under Labour. Case in point, the worst thing is, obviously have absolute solidarity to our trans siblings out there. The UK is just continuing to slide into increasingly demonising trans people just because, well, a couple of things. Firstly, because it's easy for the people in political power to do so. And secondly, because J.K. Rowling is paying them to do so as a psychotic, black mold-infested billionaire who has just taken great personal... Well, anyway, that's another story, isn't it? But basically, the manifestation of this into our railway world, other than, look out. If you're trans and working the railways, ask your managers to what their response is. What's their response? Because there have been some senior leaders in the industry who have spoken out positively about what their views are. I think Freightliner's managing director made an explicit statement in support of his trans staff. Network Rail, you can do a bit more, I think. Others could do better. If you work for the BTP, however, don't anymore. You should leave. Or, at the minimum, you should be making a public statement about how you will not be following these rules. Because within seconds of the... for anyone who doesn't know what's happened, by the way, the Supreme Court in the UK, not the US Supreme Court, as a bunch of right-wing cranks online have been jumping in on, the UK Supreme Court, a fairly new thing, by the way, a judge who lives near J.K. Rowling is mates with her and goes to a local, possibly the same, but certainly a local, extremely homophobic sect of the church, and has written extremely homophobic reports for that church. That judge happened to rule, without any involvement of any trans people, happened to rule that essentially, well, basically tried to say, well, we're going to fall back on the definition of women as being about biological, a woman is a biological woman. Which, firstly, the phrase biological woman doesn't mean anything. That's just gibberish. That's like less than GCSE biology. So nip that in the bud. Secondly, this ruling is kind of irrelevant, because just like the cash review, the important thing is what all the psychopaths then do with what they think they want the ruling to have said. In this case, including the BTP, who had a statement ready lined up to basically land within minutes of the ruling being found, which is that they were going to, basically trans women are going to be strip searched by male transport BTP officers. This is absolutely horrific. So, as well as having a dismal time traveling on our railways, getting pestered by the police, you're now going to be assaulted by an inappropriate, a incorrect sex of police officer is going to assault you. So fantastic. This is awful. If I know that BTP people listen to this, talk up about how this is awful. Speak out about it. This is dreadful. This is fascism. This is getting in ahead of fascism. This is bad. This is extremely bad. So this is absolutely horrific. There's others are better spoken on this. I'm so angry I can't really speak on it. But go and listen to Trash Future, where they've covered it really nicely in a couple of different episodes. There was a dedicated episode to it last week that was really good and explained precisely what the ruling means, how impractical it is, and what it actually has caused, what the specific legal outcomes are, but also talking about what the material consequences are, because those are two separate and equally important things. Now, people might be wondering why are Labour doing this? Well, lots of reasons, but one of the reasons is that they don't have any ideas, because that's not who they are. They're not people who have ideas. They're not people who are inspired. They don't care about us. Their whole mission is to be in charge at any cost. And unfortunately, this has been exposed by a book that is a fascinating read, The Inside Story of Labour under Starmer, and Times journalists Gabriel Pogrund and Patrick Maguire have written about this from you could arguably say a pro-Starmer position. In doing so, exposing rather gruesomely how McSweeney actively prevented Labour from winning the 2019 general election by actively seeking to undermine the party at that point. It's grim. It's grim. So what's frightening about this is this book and some of the revelations within it is if you are someone who I'm going to get my little face in the corner. Hello, I'm here. My face might be getting larger in the future as well. I'm going to make my face double the size. Imagine that. Will it even fit? You might be wondering, in fact, the revelations, sorry, I was going to make a point, wasn't I? The revelations in this book, the things that we've been saying in the left that we were even maybe holding our tongue on because they sounded like we were conspiratorial quacks, all of that is true and much more, which is... I wish it was comforting, but it is not, because it means that we have a government that is actively to the right of the previous Conservative Party in charge right now. Quite staggering. Are there any scraps of positivity? Anything we can talk about? Well, way back at the end of March, we had an announcement. The PM said North will no longer be held to ransom by broken transport system. You've maintained the cancellation of HS2. You've de-scoped Northern Paris Rail into nothing. I think potentially we're going to see that name is going to not exist next year, or even later this year, come the autumn statement. Okay, so fine. You've said that despite doing nothing. What have you announced for us? £415 million just on ETCS fitment on trains and some additional diversionary works for Transpennine route upgrade. Okay, fascinating. I mean, let's talk about Transpennine route upgrade another day, and the fact that they're burning through cash, partly because that's how much money is needed to be spent, and I'm glad it is being spent, but also that's being seen as all the North needs at this point, and that's frightening. There's some money for buses in there as well, but it's, Also roads. 1.7 billion boost for local roads. Okay, because this is broken transport system. It includes roads. 330 million in road maintenance across the North. So they're spending as much on road maintenance as they are on rail improvements. That's, yeah. What else? Some funds, 60 million quid. No, not that much. Some money. It's not 60 million quid. Some money for Portishead Bristol line, which construction work should be starting, but will it? This has been a hokey cokey of rail projects for a long time now, and government just ignored it. What else? Oh yeah, the menial £5 million central government has put forward for the extension of the completion of the Borders Railway. I'll be interested to see what that report says when it comes out, but I suspect it will be not bold. Let's see though. Way back, ages ago, mid-February, government published some stuff or did some press releases about its plans for new towns, which included talking about public transport. My fear about this, look at that little cute little growth logo, isn't that nice? I hate it when government does gimmicky things like growth logos. It's like, no, you're doing party stuff. Don't do that. Like, don't stop gimmicking government. You're making it like government versus opposition. Don't stop doing that. It's bad. Anyway, I would love to. I was going to interrogate this, have a look at these plans, but I think these plans have been basically shelved at this point. So there's no point paying much attention to any of government's plans because they seem to be shelving all of them at any given moment. What about rail reform? The big story really for us is the reform of the UK rail, or the GB rail industry. Well, once again, the Tories are doing a better job, certainly in one of the most important elements of that, which is accessibility being at the heart of the new national rail body. That has been was downgraded from being a statutory requirement to being a nice to have by the. And then the rail minister only backed this up when interviewed. He's losing allies left, right, and centre, and he did not come across well in the Transport Select Committee when quizzed about this. Even Bowker was going, he doesn't know anything. He's brief. He doesn't know the brief. He's lost. Now, the MPs of the Transport Select Committee were unconvinced by this, and they've issued a report pointing out that accessibility is a human rights issue, and therefore the government needs to include it as and do much more on an accessibility perspective. So the TSC released a very good report that I will go through coming up soon. This is a report that I will be going through very soon, actually, which goes through some of the things that we need to be looking at. So I look forward to going through that report. Indeed, at the Transport Select Committee related to this, it was reassuring to see the Secretary of State for Transport, Heidi Alexander, saying the design of new trains is critical. Too often we see gaps at platforms. Ensuring enhancement programmes at stations regarding platform design is also very important. So there's clearly an interest in the subject. No strong commitment though. So the potential to lever our way in the right direction on this one. The important thing to think when you're feeling disheartened is that better things are possible and are happening at a devolved level, frankly. And a key example is what's happening in Paris right now. Like, we need to clone Hidalgos and distribute them across the planet. Don't tell me about her deeper politics. I know I'll get depressed. I'm sure she's not super liberal, actually. I think she's all right. Anyway, parking in Paris, 3 months after the price increase, 2/3 fewer SUVs are parked on the streets. So there we go. So that's what I would describe as a single success. And what are the consequences of this? Well, between 2007 and 2024, we see what can be described as an absolutely spectacular reduction in air-based pollution. In this case, NOx, as the Washington Post are pointing out in this graphic that did the rounds. An absolutely enormous and spectacular change. Just really very, very impressive change, showing what is possible when you implement major, sweeping, and holistic policies. This is the result. Air pollution fell substantially as the city restricted car traffic and made way for parks and bike lanes. Yeah, just genuinely, really very, very spectacular. And we can do this in the UK. Burnham, arguably the most assertive and powerful city mayor away from London, if not arguably very likely is, was pointing out that, and this was again end of last month, end of March, we started the week by integrated buses and trams into a single tap and go system. A very good idea, by the way. Next, we kind of ending that week by confirming our plan to add 8 rail lines onto the B network starting next year. Again, this is exciting. Here are the plans. So we're starting phase 1, December 26, so a year and a bit away. Are the lines out to Hatfield and Glossop? So integrating those, and then the lines down to Rose Hill as well. And also what appears to be the lines up to Ashton-under-Lyne. Now, particularly on the Ashton-under-Lyne the railway there, the challenges are managing mixed traffic, and that's always going to be the challenge on a system that inherently cannot be segregated because of the lack of segregated infrastructure, which is why you need a new high-speed line across the Pennines, and you need HS2 coming through Manchester north-south. See episode 222. But this is good. Phase 2, December 2020, so a year later, are the lines to Stockport. The lines through Stockport to Buxton, through Stockport to Alderley Edge, and to the airport, the stopping services, of course. And then phase 3, which is fiddlier again, is services to Rochdale, through Bolton, to Wigan, to Appley Bridge, a new station at Goulburn. Much new work on that side, by the way, as well. Plenty to do to make this work operationally, I would suspect. My hope is that there'll be some thought put into to more turn-back facilities. Stalybridge already has turn-back facilities. Enhancement of... and obviously Manchester Airport is one of the main blockers on the whole network because its platforms are too short and it doesn't have enough of them. So it has real challenges with capacity and with train extensions. But this is positive. Why is it positive? Well, it's positive because if it's integrated into the system and you can have tap and go, it means that it's a more natural way for people to travel around the city. The branding, the identity, as I've said before, mode branding should be absolutely subservient to network branding. It's the same as the West Midlands railway system. That should retain its West Midlands branding. Likewise, Manchester following the Yellow Bee network branding would be very good, so that you have an identity, a common identity. And for the people within the railway, within GBR and elsewhere who say, but that makes it's confusing for passengers. No, it isn't. TfL get to have fully branded railway systems. So should every other major city in the country, and there is no argument against that. There is not a single viable argument against that. On a sort of flipping on its head and getting depressed again, there have been a couple of major fires in electricity kind of infrastructure recently. And Commonwealth, who do a lot of really interesting stuff about public ownership and the problems with not doing that, did a very good thread pointing out that energy networks are chronically underspending on vital infrastructure for which planning permission is largely unnecessary, because the response is often, well, it's difficult with planning. No, it isn't. No, there's a lot that you should be doing. And there's a very interesting graph here pointing out how little is being invested in transmission, in electricity. Interestingly, gas is better, but in terms of electricity transmission and distribution, it's bad, folks. So, UK Power Networks, Northern Power Grid, minus 31%. Percentage of non-load capex allowances over or underspent. So it's underspending on those allowances and putting that money where, I wonder? Into enormous profits. It's just an obviously bad way. I mean, this is beyond even the can it go bust rule. Like, it's so obvious that electricity, it's just patently and transparently obvious that you're inserting a profit margin on a thing for which there is no way to do like clever market efficiency on putting electricity through wires. Like, there's no clever way to drive that. It's not just all you're doing is adding fat and complexity. It just, yeah. Let's do some silly stuff. Let's head to Europe and do some silly stuff, shall we? Shout out to the Iberian blackout chaos last Monday. Yeah, and even more bigger shout out to all the anti-climate change, all the like climate denial people who are like, oh, it's net zero that's caused this. No, it isn't. No, it definitely is not. Let's do chuck me any chats when do chuck me some chats when you do at my name if you've got questions in chats, by the way, and I'll pick those up. There we go. Right, fine. Big port elections debate. Okay, solidarity with them all dealing with piss poor elections. Thank you, Mr. Guy Snails. Gareth is saying the deliberate exclusion of trans people. You mean whilst welcoming submissions from the nutters? Oh, I see. For the Supreme Court ruling. Yeah, absolutely. Shout out to everyone who's shout out to all of our trans siblings out there, including content creators, including people in the Discord server, just all of you. You have to live. So right, silly stuff. Switzerland's first solar system on railway track goes into operation. You might recall that I've moaned about this nonsense before, putting solar panels on the track. Let's just read this. Let's read this little piece here. It's a first in Switzerland. The first solar power plant located on a railway track has been inaugurated in the canton of Neuchâtel. I don't know. My pronunciation of the hat there is dreadful. The pilot project will test the technology under real-world conditions for 3 years. Let's keep reading. The previously unused space... The what? The previously unused space... Nope. You tamp it. you tamp the track, and that requires the beds between. You have to inspect the beds to make sure ballast hasn't. You use that to check for voids and check the track. You put balises in there. You put other signaling technologies in there. What? Previously unused space will be used to generate solar power in the future. No solar power. It's a tiny amount of space. You're talking about like nothing. It's just a tiny, tiny amount of space. Do something else with it. According to the company, the system has great potential. No, it doesn't. It does not. It does not have great potential. The installation of panels in these locations is unlikely to encounter any resistance from the population. It might encounter some resistance from anyone trying to run a railway. Good grief. So let's have a look at this. This is extremely and very obviously stupid, right? As I've described, when you maintain your railway, what you do with that to maintain the modern railway is you mechanically tamp it to ensure that it maintains line and level. And on some lines you have to do that frequently, on some lines you have to do it less frequently. But you always have to do it. And if you come along and tamp this bit of track, the way you will have to do it is get Sarah here, whoever she happens to be, get Sarah here to unclip, sorry to all the Sarahs out there, to unclip every single one of these panels, hoik it off, to manual handling to hoik it off to the side to allow the tamper to go through. The alternative, more fun approach, of course, is that you just obliterate this with your tamper and ensure the track is in the right place and leave the shattered remains of this junk in the forefoot to be digested by the ballast. This is obviously extremely stupid. Not to mention all of the additional kit that you're adding to an already quite complicated railway corridor to maintain. Don't put it here. Just don't do this. Put it elsewhere. Put it on the embankment. But it does not need to be in the forefoot. The forefoot is a live piece of... And again, this is before we talk about inspection. This is before we talk about all the other things that we need to do. Ground penetrating radars we pass to check for subgrade quality. All the things that we need to do here. What's this doing for drainage? Anyway, just... It's very, very silly. Yeah, Michael C is pointing out, shout out to Michael C. Hello, Michael. It's one of those ideas that sounds good at first, but as soon as you think about it in any amount of detail, you realize it's completely impractical, much like gadget bands. Yeah, exactly. Damien has posted a video showing this off in the Discord and how incredibly convoluted the installation and disassembly is. I can believe it. Absolutely. Kian Martin, are we going to talk about Blair's comments? No, I prefer it's a Blair-free zone. Yeah, why do they want to put it in the forefoot rather than the 6 foot cess? Well, to be honest, the same applies, but just keep it away from the railway. If you're putting it in the cess, it's going to get in the way of ballast profiles. Just keep it outside the railway. Just don't put it in the railway corridor. It doesn't need to be, you know. This look at all this space that it could be here. It could be here. There's all the places it could be. I would simply not put it anywhere near the railway. Good grief. Just hopeless. Right. So, no, we don't want to get rid of Continue. Continue is the best way to electrify the railway. What else? That's more silly stuff. Well, there's actually a very interesting little article in Tagesschau from Germany saying, are hydrogen trains a multi-million-dollar flop? To which we know the answer is yes. If anyone's talking about hydrogen trains, back when the Transport Decarbonisation Network Strategy talked about the Traction Decarbonisation Network Strategy, the TDNS, Network Rails document looking at electrification or otherwise, considered hydrogen trains, it didn't have the benefit of all this experience, and therefore it said reasonably positive things about hydrogen trains. We should now abandon the idea of using hydrogen trains. They're a dead technology. We should go nowhere near it. And there's a nice little story that was posted a couple of days ago talking about all of these hydrogen trains that are just basically parked in depots behind freight trains. Hidden behind freight cars, they stand uselessly at a train station in Gießen, Hesse. Hydrogen-powered regional trains. Hydrogen. Oh, yeah. It's a slightly weird AI translated bit of text probably. As the world's largest hydrogen fleet, 27 of these trains were supposed to launch at the Rhine-Main Transport Association and replace diesel trains. The project cost 500 million euros, but instead, years of chaos followed. Yeah, pretty much the story. Yeah. More silly stuff. The French are at it again. Yeah, here we are. The what is that? Drazy. Forgive my French. I'm sorry, everyone in France. Light rail system. It's not a light rail system. It's rediscovering the rail bus for the modern era. This is basically a bit like the rural VLR. It looks snazzy, But when you look at the next picture, let's just read this, by the way. Scheduled for testing in 2027 on a local kind of rural line. This looks suspiciously like one on the French-German border near Strasbourg. Someone else correct me on that one. Or it could be Swiss border, I suppose. The prototype design is ongoing. This solution, devised by Lore industry, to always be treated with suspicion. And the SNCF group aims to revitalise small rail lines. The objective for the Grand Est region to reopen a local rail line. We've seen all this before, and where does it go? Nowhere, because the problem isn't the vehicle. It is not the vehicle. Here's a picture of it. Oh yeah, look, it's just like the rural VLR thing, but even smaller. What problem is this solving? The problem isn't it's not the train, it's the fact that the service is thin on the ground, and therefore it's not particularly useful versus driving. Well, yeah, okay, so more silly ideas. And we're not immune to silly ideas in the UK, of course, because yet another driverless bus trial has ended. A multi-million-pound trial of a driverless bus has ended, or to end human error, has concluded after shuttling passengers in a city centre for a month. Multi-million-pound trial for a month. And it was not particularly well used in Sunderland, and RIP. Driverless buses, completely purposeless, daft idea. Right, we had a stats episode last week. We need to talk about stats very briefly. Now, what do we want to talk about stats? Well, what we want to say about stats is that we have to beware of them, because there's a new report that's been published, which will be interesting to have a look at, and it's describing the most popular reason for passengers to travel by train as being for leisure. Now, why is this a problem? Well, it's a problem because the categorization of what leisure travel is useless. Leisure travel is anything that isn't London commuting or freight or long-distance services. That's basically it. Like, there's no real, actual, curiosity statistically that we haven't changed that form of categorization for decades and decades. And leisure is just an inappropriate word to use to describe, like, casual travel maybe is a bit more accurate, but even that isn't particularly helpful. Like it's not leisure if you're traveling to and from university. It's not leisure if you are, taking kind of, longer distance trips that are not formed of commuting. Like this is scrappy. It's messy. The trouble with this as well is that it means people start going, well, we need to change what our railway does to account for this type of passenger travel, which is a problem. What it does help, there is some helpful side effects of this, is that we can start thinking about stopping. I mean, I've always made this argument, even when there was more commuting travel, that we should stop doing holiday blockades to do railway work. Like, unless there is absolutely no diversion or nothing you can do for freight, because that's often the challenge for these blockades, or putting the blockade midweek. But we do the blockade anyway. So we can clearly make it work. Do them midweek. Close the railway away from a holiday over multiple weeks during work time, because commuters can find, if commuters know what's going on, they regularly travel, you can firstly get them information more easily. They understand what the benefits will be because they travel regularly. They can make arrangements, like in some cases working from home, or in other cases they can perhaps make some other arrangement or just book a holiday for that period. There are things that people can do to work around. Whereas a leisure traveller, all right, let's reword that, someone who's travelling by train and has gone, oh, you know what, we are going to take the train for this holiday, turns up and gets a bus, a replacement bus, are never travel, or they deal with disruption, they're never travelling by train again. You've lost them. They're gone. I know we've talked about this before in Rail Natter, but it's really so there are potential benefits to this view, but we have to be really careful about shouting about the idea that we have a leisure-led railway, because that doesn't hold up. It does not hold up. And we need to be building a railway that works for every kind of traveller, not focusing on the latest fad either. Some more good things. I want to talk about good things. The 20-mile-an-hour speed limit has literally cut road deaths. About 100 people are alive today who wouldn't be, or have avoided suffering from life-changing injuries because of this change, which in and of itself should end any debate on it and should see that being rolled out further. Serious success. So that's really good news, and I'm hoping that some of these reports coming out will help the Welsh Assembly, the Welsh government, to shout out anyone who's trying to reverse this, because, do not get me wrong, a lot of people will be trying to. Let's stick in Wales for a bit, actually, because there's thanks to those who have used it, Gareth, you're in the chat, for sending this out. More good things, and we will pick this up. Someone's going to have to remind me of all the things we're going to pick up as PDF page turn episodes coming up. Gwynedd train route would see bridge over A55, rail tunnels, and petrol station demolished. Yeah, so the consideration, there's a report has been published looking at a route, a way to serve connection between the railway networks of the line that goes up to Pwllheli and the line that goes across to Holyhead. So connecting the North Wales main line to the Cambrian coastline. Just because I don't think the North-South mainline railway should go this route doesn't mean I don't think it's a good idea to create this connection. I do think it's a good idea to create this connection. I'm very interested to see what the report says, and I want a page turn this one. I want to have a look. This is absolutely something that I'm keen to look at to see how it plays into our bigger plans. And other things, talking about North-South, is the fact this might be closed now, this consultation. So please double check if it is. It might have, if it's still open, then have your say. Transport for Wales are wanting views on a proposed North-South express coach service. Again, a good idea. Like having an express North-South coach service that is integrated into rail timetables, or I hope it will be, is a really good idea. You can do things like follow the route of your potential railway in the future, and therefore build mode shift towards public transport as an option on the promise that there will be a future rail link. There are lots of things you can do with this. Again, I don't think there's a report out on this, but Gareth, if you have a dig around, see if there's anything that we can actually have a flick through, because I'm certainly interested to have a look at this. We might tack it onto the back of the Gwynedd kind of connection episode. So less good news. So bad news, in fact, that I've not put a Chiron on this one. Let's just do that very thing. Why have I got rid of this? I think it's the start of. Let's just copy this and go. There we are. Bad things. Well, what do I want to talk about here? Well, I'm very excited by the new Stadler fleet being introduced on the Tyne and Wear Metro. It is not good news that there have been some issues that resulted in a door opening on the wrong side of the platform, on the the track side rather than the platform side of the train. And I also didn't like Stadler saying it's not our fault, it's a problem that the drivers have made. That's, hello Stadler, don't do that. Do not do that. There are clearly challenges to introducing the fleet. That's what happens with the new fleet. There are challenges. I don't know. I'd be interested. To some extent, you might find that there'll be challenges with the Tyne and Wear Metro doing this for the first time, or the first time since the new fleet, the original fleet was introduced, and just not quite having the knowledge and the staff to catch all these issues in advance of them happening. Stadler, therefore, it's your job to help them with this, and you should not be then blaming the drivers for causing a problem. I was trying to read all the literature from the Tyne and Wear Metro side, the Nexus side. I didn't see anything blaming the train. So I'm disappointed in Stadler for that statement they made. This will get fixed, but it's disappointing that this is safety critical. They shouldn't be seeing a mistake like this, a problem like this occur out in service is really, not ideal. Doors opening, on the wrong side onto tracks is the sort of thing we would have seen with, we shouldn't be seeing that sort of thing, since the days of the first trains opening to replace slam door stock back in the 70s. It's not ideal. Not ideal. Some more good things. Let's talk about this good thing, which is, I've had a lot to say about the Northumberland Line. Indeed, I want to get Jen on here to talk about the Northumberland Line when she's up for it and up to it. I'd love to talk to her about what she thinks about the line and what she found disappointing. Probably very similar things to what I found disappointing. However, it has been an absolutely bloody raging success, and I'm so pleased it has. I'm not complaining about the Northumberland Line because I don't want it to be there. I'm complaining because, as we have found out, as I'll put up on screen in a second, build this stuff and people will use it, and the people who are using it are getting what I would describe as a pretty disappointing, looking railway for the numbers that we're talking about, because this line is not even finished being built yet. There's still half the stations haven't been opened yet. They're still half built, And it is, let's just zoom in on a particular paragraph in the BBC story that they really buried the lead on. 5 times more passengers than predicted. That's 250,000 journeys versus 50,000 journeys predicted. 5 times the number of passengers. Now, the business case for judging on how much basic galvanized steel that gets put up rather than actually building, hub station and, some double platforms and the sorts of things that the service actually needs to function properly, and to just, to satisfy these numbers and this demand, was, the modelling was based on, if it was based on 50,000, let's take a basic look at this. What would we be achieving if we were spending 5 times as much on capital expenditure on the railway line? That's what I would love to know. Because we've spent enough to justify a service for 50,000 people. How much would we have spent? How much more would we have spent? How much better a railway would we have had if we'd spent 5 times as much? Because you wouldn't need to spend 5 times as much. You could spend double and get what some might call a gold-plated railway. So it just shows the extent to which the modelling is so duff. It is duff. DfT modelling, completely duff. And as Michael C is pointing out, how many stations are now woefully underbuilt to the point of potentially getting overcrowded thanks to this duff modelling? Yeah, it's very, very frustrating. And yes, this, again, would justify things like full electrification. Just like borders, we're going to have a situation where we can't run the number of trains that passengers want and need. We're going to have trains that are overcrowded. And a situation where it's extremely expensive to upgrade the line because we didn't do it when we had access to it much more readily before passenger services were running. This is good, but it's frustrating, and it shows how much the DfT's modelling and Treasury modelling are just completely unfit for purpose. Now, some more good things. We're going to end on some sad things, I'm afraid, but I want to get some good things in before we go back to the sad things. This is a really good news story, and I talk about this in the book, about the fact that the unions can and will lead on improving our working conditions. Tube drivers in ASLEF have voted for a 4-day week, and it says some tube drivers in London have voted in favour. No. Tube drivers, the majority of tube drivers have voted in favour of this. This is what's happened. London Underground are bringing forward a proposal for a 4-day week with paid meal break for drivers. This is such a good idea because let me tell you a variety of things about the 4-day working week. Firstly, without a reduction in pay, which I'd be interested to know if that is what they're doing here. I suspect they probably are reducing pro rata pay, although I hope not. I'd be interested, someone who knows the plans more closely, tell me. But the facts about 4-day working week: keep pay the same, workers will deliver more. They will deliver more, not just the same, but more than a 5-day working week, and they'll be much happier and healthier. And they will stay in that job for longer. Like, the retention levels will improve for staff if you have a 4-day working week. It's also a fantastic way for the public sector to obliterate the private sector on working conditions. If you are struggling to bring staff in as the public sector, say councils or others, offer a 4-day working week, and that problem will do a good job of solving itself. This is fantastically good news, and it's being led by, it's being championed by and led by organised labour, by a union, and it's fantastic. Michael C. pointing out, 4-day working week is an objectively good thing. It's stacked and we haven't rolled it out as standard. Right, the sad news. This is a pretty horrific situation here. This was on the 11th of February in 2025, where we have a German high-speed train colliding with a truck loaded with railway rails at a crossing. How on earth this happened? How on earth this happened? But this is extremely bad news. There's also more justification for why level crossings and fast trains do not mix. Tragically, someone has died. I don't know who. I don't know whether it was a driver or who it is who died. But there were more than 12 people injured. This was a while back. We might have had more details since this point. But I just wanted to point out the incompatibility of level crossings with operational railways. It's just. Not good. A pretty upsetting situation here. More bad things. That's right, it's the US Transportation Secretary, Sean P. Duffy, the wording of this is save taxpayers over 60 million, which we can translate as cost taxpayers multiple billions in highway upgrades by ending the grant for the Texas High-Speed Rail project, which means they've killed the project. So they have killed one of the other major good high-speed rail projects that was likely to be close to delivery. Extremely frustrating. The Amtrak Texas High-Speed Rail Corridor, which should have continued to be an Amtrak project. Well, they've un-Amtraked it. Dallas-Houston, an extremely lucrative corridor that should have high-speed rail. I mean, obviously, so many should have high-speed rail. We're going to do another episode with Tom to talk about where we need more more railways and fewer airplanes in the US, because it was good fun. But this is grim. Notable that what was the day this happened? This happened on April the 14th, 2025, and on slightly prior to this, Elon Musk had replied to some Twitter account saying, "Hooray! Amtrak just initiated the tender process for building the Texas high-speed rail project." Elon Musk does confusey face tweet, and then the DOT cancel it. So yeah, isn't it great? Isn't it great? Isn't the US great? Meanwhile, Elon Musk doing other things, like saying that Amtrak should be privatized, which, again, as we've discussed previously, not a good idea. No, don't do that. It's a extremely bad idea to do that. Other things Trump are doing, well, this is funny, and the reason I'm putting this up isn't necessarily to shout at Trump, because this is just part of the course. Of course they're going to do evil things. This is the least of the evil things they're doing. This is the Trump administration moving to end New York City's congestion charge. Well, firstly, they'll have fun trying to do that. Secondly, the thing that's insidious about this isn't what Trump's doing. It's what Hochul has been doing, because she cancelled it originally as a Democrat, took a massive stand on cancelling it, on delaying it, cancelling it, bidding it, only for it to eventually get pushed through by kind of brute force. And then now here she is standing up, holding up the picture of Trump as a king, and going, "This is bad. It's really bad that they're doing this." Well, maybe if you'd had it embedded for longer, New Yorkers would have been fighting even harder to retain it, because they'd have seen some benefit from it. So, this is a kind of a bit of a proxy for everything the Democrats are currently doing in the US, which is nothing, with very few exceptions. So yeah, that is bad. And of course, this is the key thing, because the challenge with this is that the car dependence that these things that the government are undermining is only going to embed is what's making people vote for Trump, and or more generally making people unhappy and allowing populism to rise in the first place. This is a fascinating report that was issued last year that points out that car dependency is driving Americans to unhappiness. It is fundamentally causing happiness in the country to plummet. I wonder what other countries this applies to. Now, I wanted to end on something that's a bit of a portent for the future. So there's some interesting chat. I'm going to go back to the chat in a minute, but before we go to the chat, I just wanted to point out this news story, which is really interesting, which is the massive shipping company, Danish company Maersk, has bought the Panama Canal Railway Company. Now, you might say, well, whatever, it's these sorts of things happen all the time, fine. The Panama Canal won't be able to function in 20 or 30 years. Like, it won't be able to work. There won't be enough water to keep the canal functioning, which will have an enormous effect on global trade, global shipping, an absolutely enormous effect on it. And Maersk are probably starting to realize that the alternative will be rail transshipment, will be ships docking on one side of the coast, those containers being transferred onto intermodal flats and taken across to the other coast and then shipped in the other direction. This is a reality of climate change. It's been realized, the big multinational logistics companies are way ahead of the governments on this one. Just an interesting portent. As we think of the picture of the fans in New Street Station and the fact that we built an Eden project to put a railway station in, we should be aware and remind ourselves that this is happening now. We're in the midst of this, and it's causing problems. And the there are no non-radical futures. There are no non-radical futures. Right, let's do some on that subject. I'll tell you what, on that subject, I'm going to do the outro and then I'll pick up questions at the end because there's a few nice bits of chat. But I'm going to get rid of my face and say, look, this is kind of a tight episode. Anyway, the usual this podcast out on the usual platforms. A bit of a delay. I'll be sorting that out tonight, and also there will be. This will be changing the product. It'll be turning into a much tighter product. So you'll get a tighter product in future. A kind of a clipped version of this without some of my waffles and things that basically removing things that are deemed to be superfluous by my editor. So that'll be that's exciting. But it's available. Please do leave a review on your favorite podcasting platforms. The usual plugs. GarethDennis.co.uk/merch for the merchandise. GarethDennis.co.uk/Discord for the chat to continue ad infinitum. I'm waving at everyone in the chat. Hello. But also a plug on the Patreon. Patreon.com/GarethDennis. As I said at the head, it is Patreon that allows this to keep happening. And there are going to be some changes to Patreon, positive ones, I hope. I'm going to be tightening up what the available tiers are. There are going to be discussions to the existing Patreon people. I'm going to chat with you about discussions for potentially... We're going to be looking at some changes to thresholds in that you'll get some, you will provide some benefit and support at the £1 tier, but tiers above, you will start getting some bonus stuff, which will include a Rail Natter extra episode after every Rail Natter. There will be like a 10-15 minute extra bonus episode. And within that episode, it will be, one of the things we'll do will be answering a question from those good Patreon people in a bit more detail. So if you have a question that you specifically want to ask, but that you want me to do more than just an off-the-head, rapid-fire thought, and you want me to actually put some thought into it, maybe even with some visual aids, then you can, if you're a Patreon subscriber at the what I suspect will be the £5 or above tier, you'll be able to actually input into a mini episode. You'll be able to shape a mini episode. So there'll be a bonus natter for Patreon supporters. Among other things, there'll be other bits and pieces that you will get above that. So yeah, there'll be there's a little bit of thought still to go into that, but there's some changes afoot on that front to give you more, to allow me to give you more, basically. So it allows a consistent bit of extra fun content, some more interactivity, potentially some little masterclassy type episodes where I talk through a thing that I've done and campaigning and how I went about it and what I think you should do, things of this nature, right? So that's, for me, that's very exciting. The point being to grow the Patreon a bit, actually, to allow a bit more growth on the Patreon, to allow me to then get some more support to do more stuff. It's a bit of a virtuous cycle on that front. So that's kind of the plan on the Patreon front, just to give you all an update. But if you are a Patreon supporter already, there'll be more chat about this in the Discord server where you have your exclusive Patreon kind of area, which will still, the Discord area will remain open for all the Discord folks. I believe that's still going to remain the case. That's not going to become more exclusive. So, yes, key things. So we need to bump the numbers on this. So today's presentation that happened in Hopetoun and Darlington didn't happen in Hopetoun and Darlington because the numbers, mostly because it only went up on their website like a couple of weeks ago. No, not a couple of weeks ago, like a few days ago. And well, let's just put it this way: I didn't want to put them out of money by charging them for my tickets when there were only a few people there and they couldn't make the money back. I'm not going to be unfair on that one. So that doesn't mean that basically get booking. These are basically going to be live rail natters. I'm pushing for the timing to be a bit later because at the moment it says 2 p.m. I think that's a bit silly. I'm going to try and push it to be a 4 p.m. start. I'm going to double check that. Even if it's a 3:30, I think it's easier for people to get to it than a 2 o'clock. So I'm going to try and push that to shape that up and make that work a bit better. But you can book tickets at hopetowndarlington.co.uk/what-on/Gareth-Dennis-talks, because Gareth Dennis talks all things railways. Yeah, there's going to be so there will be the talks. So for those who there were a few people from here who were expecting to go. This is another reason why it's always important to book ahead in the events, because whether an event goes ahead or not is planned around the booked people. So yeah, go to that, book your tickets for either the Wednesday the 4th of June session or the Wednesday the 10th of September session. The Wednesday the 4th of June session will be a kind of a railway history, the Beyond 2025 session. Well, I'll tell you what, let's jump through. So there's the lovely Hopetown website. It's a lovely bit of website. And look, it's me pointing at my own mustache. And within there, yeah, so Gareth Dennis talks. Join me, etc., etc. What am I saying? So from ancient Greece to California, a longer history of railways is what I'll be doing on the 4th of June. And keeping humanity moving, the railways of the future will be what I'll be doing from on the 10th of September. So some really nice talks. I'm excited to shape up what that second talk's going to be. The first one is also going to be kind of a fresh launch. I am excited about these two. So do come along, please come and book. I don't possibly prices from £3. I think they are like it's a nominal £3 ticket, which will go towards pay my train fare essentially. But I believe that's how that'll work. Come along. There will be seats for up to 40 people. Come on, rail natter folk. We can do this. We can let's give the Hopetown folks a good show, shall we? So I'll be plugging this hard. I'm speaking to their marketing people to make sure they plug it hard as well because they haven't been. We'll do something fun with this. It's going to be fun. I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be a bit of interactive here and there. Come and get stuck in. Next week, we are going to be talking about Starline's high-speed plans for Europe. This came up, and it looked completely stupid and ridiculous, and I want to talk about it. Because what is going on with this thing? So I want to talk about this. So that's what we're going to be doing next week, is talking about Starline's plans for Europe and the fact that they're maybe a bit silly. So that's the plan. We'll be following this up with a kind of a part 2 that looks at less silly plans, because CER have some much less silly plans that I think are of merit and worth us looking at. Let's get my enormous face up, shall we? Hello, everyone. It's lovely to see you. I'm going to have a little sip. What are Starline? Who knows what Starline are, is all I have to say about that. So, some chat. Let's have a look at some questions. The consultation is closed for the North-South Wales Express bus, in which case we might get a report, which would be good. The proposals page is still up, so you can have a look at that. Michael C. pointing out we've consistently underestimated ridership levels for new railways. Northumberland Line, Dartmoor Line, Borders Line, Elizabeth Line. Yep, consistently, every single time. Networker fan, they need to electrify the Northumberland Line, absolutely. It can be operated by Class 331s running in pairs. Ryan Hogg, lots of complaints about level crossings being closed for 2 trains per hour. 2 on that line. Closing level crossings for not much service, absolutely. Would that sort of spending have needed to include rebuilding or expansion at Newcastle Central? Well, again, thinking more practically about what happens in Newcastle Central and in the long term might have been a better idea. But equally, maybe the Northumberland line should have been connected into the Tyne-Wear Metro, and that should have been the approach rather than it, because that might have then avoided the Newcastle Central problem. I don't know. There could have been an option to think differently there on that line. But anyway, what else have we got? Master Tram saying, I'd also recommend speaking with City Nerd. I forget their real name, who's good on US planning. Thank you, Master Trams. That'd be very interesting, actually. And the director of... Gareth saying, pointing out that the fatality of the German crash was a 55-year-old German historian, Thomas Grossbölting, who was seated in the 4th carriage. It's, so not the driver, but sadly a fatality of a passenger, which is horrific. Lippy8798, daily Tyne-Wear Metro user here. First time on one of the Class 555s today. The air conditioning was amazing, but the seats seem very hard compared to the old trains. Oh, it's seatitis, and I'm not going to bother defending them anymore, because if those seats are the same knackered seats that we see elsewhere, they're going to disintegrate in a couple of weeks. It'll be frustrating. I hope not. I suspect they're the same as the Merseyrail ones. The seats are harder, but they're more hardware. They're a bit better. Yeah. They're not. It's not like the Azuma train situation. Uncritical Simon, would a railway have enough capacity to replace the Panama Canal? Not a conventional 2-track one. I suspect you find a situation where you'd need a 4-track railway running freight in parallel to get the level of capacity, and it would speed train after train after train. I think the challenge wouldn't be the railway line, because railways have incredible capacity. The challenge would be getting a port that you can get the capacity of to maintain the current throughput. That would be the challenge. So let's see. Interesting Panama Canal fact. A vessel sailing from the Atlantic in the east to the Pacific in the west actually sails west to east in the canal. I'm puzzled by this fact, Gareth. You're going to have to, as a marine nerd, you have to explain it all to us. But opinions on Bristol Temple Meads not being electrified, despite how clearly key to making a good suburban rail network in Bristol. I mean, it's ridiculous it's not been electrified. Gareth, you get the Q&A every episode at the end of the... Gareth, there's always a Q&A, because it's always at the end. Every episode's a Q&A for everyone. It's just that you get short, quick brain answers. Right, see. Ryan Hogg, the Tyneway Metro option wasn't taken forward due to journey times to Central compared to mainline option now used. Interesting. Yeah, okay. I think more work needs to be done at Newcastle Central. But yeah, there are certainly challenges left, right, and centre. The lack of electrification is a major flaw in the Northumberland line, because the mixed traffic issue is a major part of that problem. Oh, the A, B, and T issue is the shared 2-track bridge over the Coast Road East Coast Main Line was already full. Yeah, absolutely. Do you know how many unprotected railway crossings there are in the UK? So many. Didn't Deutsche Bahn talk about a European high-speed rail plan that was more realistic? Deutsche Bahn might have, but there's one that was done by CER, which we're going to look at in a few weeks. That's much more interesting, much more useful to talk about. Anyway, as it is 3 minutes past 9, this has been the last week where I don't do the little bonus, because I think I will do the little bonus, if not next week, then possibly the week after. The Pacific mouth is further east than the Atlantic mouth. One of them quirks of geography. Ha! Huh. Well, there we go. Thank you, Gareth. Weird and fascinating facts. Look at that. Anyway, right. Everyone, that's a fun way to end. Thank you, Gareth. Yeah, what an interesting... there's some news. I will try... I always try not to do news episodes. I kind of want to just put the interesting news at the start of the weekly episode, but it often doesn't work that way, and I end up speaking for half an hour about the news and not about this subject. But anyway, enough about this. I am going to give you all a cheerio, an enthusiastic cheerio to wave all of you off, and I'll see you next week, everyone. Cheerio!